Hello, it is 6:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. For those that are able, if you wouldn't mind standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are missing Mr. Schultz tonight, but we still have a quorum, so I will call this meeting to order. Dr. Phillips.
Thank you, Mrs. Wielden. Thanks everyone for being here this evening. We like to start each meeting with reminding ourselves and each other of our mission, vision, and core beliefs as a district. Our vision is that BCSC is the choice to learn, work, and play. Our mission is to develop expert learners by partnering with our community to invest in people. And our core beliefs are that we all can rise to the challenge of high expectations, that learning is most effective when we have choice, flexibility, and see relevance.
Wouldn't mind to get us started.
Sure, no problem.
Wouldn't mind to get us started.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for asking. Many of you know that a week ago, Friday evening, we received notification of a threat that came in through social media to some of our students and specific school. It was a little bit surreal as I looked up at the football game at North High School, and there was a 12-year-old or so just a few rows in front of me who was holding the same screen that I had just looked at on the text that came in. I watched him turn to his parent that he was sitting next to and show it to the parent, and they shook their head, and then the kid just swiped on to the next post. So it is a sad commentary that that's where we are today, that we have to address direct threats to the safety of our students and our staff and our schools. But I want to first and foremost thank those who worked to get it right last week, because there was a lot of pressure to act quickly, and the police departments involved, the individual detectives who gave up their entire weekend to chase this case down, instead of working to get it done quickly, they worked to get it done right. And so I want to thank them for both their time and their attention to making sure that that's the case. Also, just want to ask again to remind families, please talk to your students, to your children, and clarify what it means to see something and say something, what it means and what it does not mean. And of course, it means report something that you see directly to a school official, law enforcement, and/or a parent. It does not mean to click or elevate that post, that message in any way, and any student who does so will face consequences. So report those directly to school members, parents, or law enforcement. The last thing I want to point out is that thank you to those in the community that reached out with a sincere desire to help. Our fourth core belief there states that our community and school district are stronger when we partner with one another. And it's sad that none of us individually can guarantee that we will not have a tragedy here in Columbus, Indiana. But if we all do our individual part together as a community, we can dramatically reduce the likelihood that something like that will happen. And I want to thank, again, the community members and law enforcement who worked hard last week to make sure that we all did our part to make sure that everyone could be safe last week.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Next on the agenda, we have 2024 appropriation. Dr. Bozeman, Mr. Brinegar. He's sending you up there all by yourself. His name was there too.
I am, but he's right there.
Okay.
He's close by. Good evening. Bringing to you the additional appropriation request for 2024. Discussions on this began last year, shortly after the collective bargaining agreement was put in place. I believe Dr. Phillips brought this up, that we would need to do an appropriation most likely for 2024 to cover those expenses. And we are bringing those to you today. As we discussed with the Q2 financial report a little over a month ago, we know that our revenues are going to be enough that we can cover these costs without going into our reserves at all. So while it looks like it's an appropriation into our reserves, it's an appropriation on top of what was approved in the budget during last year's cycle. And these costs in the education fund, we've got $3 million for salary and benefit increases due to the contract negotiations, $300,000 for increased substitute costs, $130,000 for literacy coaches, and that's within the education fund for a total of $3.58 million there. And then in the operations fund, $500,000 in salary increases and $120,000 for the data analysis contract for a total of $620,000 within the operations fund. All total, $4.2 million of additional appropriation. Again, our revenues and are high enough this year with lower than anticipated expenditures that we will not have to dig into our reserves in order to cover these costs. We do have sufficient funds in place to cover these.
And so, Ms. Wheelan, this is the first of 2 public hearings this evening, so if you'd like, we could take questions from the board first and then the public, if need be.
Yes, Dale.
I have one question that I should know the answer to, but I don't, so I'm going to ask you. The increase in substitute costs, is it because we're paying them more or we're using more subs? Or both?
We're using more subs.
Okay.
We increased the pay a few years ago, so this is all usage.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips.
The data analysis portion, that $120,000, I don't have a problem necessarily with it, other than the one thing that I think I was concerned with is when I read the document, it said something like it was reviewed with administrators, but it didn't confirm that it was reviewed with teachers. So I think we have, between now and next time, we have a CIC meeting. I'm just asking that be, I don't know if it is between now and then, but I think it's in October, or this week is the next CIC meeting.
November, actually, I believe.
Is it November? Okay, so my only concern is before we commit to spending a lot of money, that we have that scoped out with teachers too, to make sure that it's going to have what they want as well. Because again, it just said administrators, so I don't know. If it's been through the CIC and the teachers are all good with it, then I'm fine with it. But
It did go through review at the last CIC meeting.
Okay.
There's no formal voting or approving process there, but we discussed it with the CIC, answered a few questions, and that was
okay, yeah, I just want to make sure they've seen it and had the ability to provide feedback. If they've had that, then I'm good.
Okay, at this time, anyone from the public who would have a question could step up and ask anything you like on this topic. Yes, sir.
Hello. Maybe I don't need these glasses. Hey, my name is David Tiley, Columbus resident, and I've got 4 questions here for the board tonight. On the school corporation website, I did a search under the policies and under the subfolder called strategic goals. That's what's in there. So looking in that folder, it was empty. There's nothing in there. So there's 2-part question to that. So if the information's not posted in the subfolder yet, that's my first question. Is it just there somewhere, just not posted? That's my first question, because there was nothing in there. And the second question is, how does the existing proposed budget fit in with the school corporation's strategic goals, especially the financial ones? So that's why I'm interested, because if we're going to build this budget, it should align with our strategic planning, especially financial goals, especially with the taxpayers and everybody else kind of paying attention to what we're doing here. So I'll pause right there.
This isn't actually a back and forth conversation, but we'd be happy to take your input. Thank you.
Okay,
You can keep
sure.
going.
Okay, my next question is, how are we trending on the current year actual expenses versus the 2024 budget? So I see the budget numbers, but I'd like to know how are we trending with expenses versus budget? There again, in the documents today, wasn't provided where we are in actual expenses. Okay, my third question, are there any school board members on the budget committee? And if the answer is, if not, why are school board members not excluded from this oversight? And then my last question, on the big one there that was on our budget was the utilities and supplies. And there, you know, we all saw that it's up nearly, it's projected to be up nearly 30%. So one of the questions I had related to that is, have we considered negotiating long-term contracts with utility companies, if that's a possibility? I'm not sure if it is or isn't, but I know in private industry it is a possibility. I wasn't sure if that was applicable to the school corporation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Mr. Tiley, I can answer a few of those questions. It's a public hearing on the additional appropriation. I'll look into the goals section of the website. So we do a quarterly update to the board on actuals versus budget. And so that last one, I don't have the data in front of me right now, but that would have been in one of the August meetings. And so if you want to go back and look, or we can send you the update that the board gets every quarter. And we are tracking below expenditures overall and higher revenue for a variety of different reasons, some of that being higher rates on investments, but mainly student count being higher than we budgeted for, as well as this per pupil support from the state being higher than we budgeted for. And then last, on the utilities and supply budget line, there was just a one-year dramatic decline in 2024's budget. So when we look at 21, 22, 23, you can see that it tracks along for electricity somewhere in that $2.5 million mark. In 24, we had carried forward appropriations from prior years so often that we just reduced the budget for that 1 year to use the cash that had been carried forward from the prior years, knowing that the next year in 25 it would go back up. And so there's really not that much of a dramatic increase in utilities. We see some in water and sewer, but the others have been pretty flat. And Dr. Bozeman, I know, can speak to our agreement on natural gas. That's really where we've invested a lot of time and energy in hedging the market and make sure we do have a long-term strategy there with prices around natural gas.
Sure. We're in a large group co-op purchasing for our natural gas with some of the larger school districts across the state, to where we basically we meet at least twice a year, but we go through and we hedge our purchases out as far as 7 years in advance, based on what the market's doing, et cetera. And we also save because of just the bulk of gas that we're purchasing. We don't have that opportunity with our electricity. Certainly if we did, we'd be all over it, because it reaped some good benefits for us on the natural gas side.
Yeah, I guess just to answer one other question regarding the committee assignments, we've had a list of set committees. We had made some alterations to those, although of something like a budget, we would really want the input of the entire board into that process, which is why we have the regular reviews, why we have access to the team. We really want everyone's input, not just one board member's necessarily. Yeah.
And Mr. Stinner pointed out to me it was the August 19th meeting was the last, that was Q2 update. And then in October, the next meeting, we should be doing the Q3 financial review.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any questions, comments?
Okay,
I
thank
haven't,
you.
appreciate it.
Is that effective wait time?
I actually count in my
Teachers and
head,
audience.
Chad, you were 2 seconds too quick, but that's okay.
And so,
2025 budget hearing. is next.
Right, and I think, Mr. Tiley, you were referring to this one generally. There are technically two different hearings, but we'll take comments anytime, so.
Back to me?
Yes.
Back to you.
All right. This is officially our 2025 budget hearing. 2 weeks ago, Dr. Phillips led the work session. I appreciated him doing that as we are looking at a deficit budget for this year, and he explained those reasons. I do want to tease him a little bit. He wanted to save me from having to do that and then had me do an additional appropriation, so thank you. Again, work session 2 weeks ago. Today is our public hearing for the budget. At next month's regularly scheduled meeting, we will bring forth the full budget for your approval. And then we are told by DLGF by January 1, they will provide us with our official budget approval with our official tax rate at that time. What is on this slide is the public notice that we put on the state's Gateway website. We got that in on Friday the 13th, meeting the deadline to have it 10 days before today's hearing. It has the information on our 5 tax-supported funds, what our budget estimates are for those funds, and what the levy appeals or the current tax levies and the maximum estimated funds that we would be raising from taxes for each of those funds. I borrowed from Dr. Phillips' presentation here. This is the highlights of the 25 budget. Again, there's been significant investment in staff over the last few years. Again, we are proposing a salary increase for next year, looking at 3% for classified staff, and the teaching and administrative staff is still to be determined. We have 12 full-time equivalent positions being added. Several of those are a part of the ESSER cliff, with the ESSER funding ending for Monday on September 30th. We were then pulling those positions within our education fund budget. We have significant capital investments as part of this budget. With safety and infrastructure, Dr. Phillips again mentioned 2 weeks ago, looking at a $2 million investment in safety equipment. The initial thought had been to do a $500,000 investment over 4 years, but as we can afford to do it within our budget and keep the tax rate the same, looking at the $2 million investment, where if equipment comes on that is technologically advanced, where we would want to purchase that now instead of waiting 4 years, we can go ahead and do that now. Regular facility maintenance of about $1.5 million, co-curricular programs, and again, as I was stating a little bit earlier, no anticipated increase to our tax rate. Looking at the education fund specifically, revenues compared to last year, we're anticipating a 3.2% increase in revenues. Again, this is our best guess estimate because we will know what our first semester revenues will be from the state, but until the state meets and sets the budget for the next 2-year cycle of the state's budget, we won't know what our fall revenues will be in relation to the education fund. So this is our best guess estimate. Again, a 3.2% increase. Looking at our expenditures, 95% of the budget within the education fund is for employee salaries and benefits. Huge part of the budget and slight increases from last year to this year. We're looking at professional services, a slight decrease. Communications, a little bit of an increase. Supplies, a little bit up. Overall, the education fund budget, $90 million compared to $84 million last year, is a 6.5% increase. As Dr. Phillips explained two weeks ago, because of the health of our reserves within the education fund, we are looking at doing a deficit fund, or deficit budget for this year's cycle. The beginning of 24, we have $6.6 million in there. We were trending ahead in revenues, lower in expenditures, so that reserve level has grown for the first 8 months of this year. And again, even with that additional appropriation, we're anticipating ending the year close to that $6.6 million. With the deficit budget, we anticipate 25 ending with $4.6 million. Again, a very healthy balance for that education fund. Operations fund revenues anticipating growth of about 4.4% from 33 million to 34.7 million. Expenditures are growing by about 12%. A big part of that, again, as was pointed out just a little bit ago, the utilities has a growth of 29.8%. Dr. Phillips went through that reasoning and thought process. The property and equipment, again, we looked at, if you take away, we were anticipating first doing a $500,000 for the security equipment. Instead, we're doing $2 million because we can afford to do it while keeping our rate the same. That would have been a no growth, but with adding that extra 1.5 million, that's a 29% increase there in our property and equipment budgeting, and total expenditures of 38.8 million compared to budgeted 34.6 for this year. Deficit budget spending, looking at an end of balance of 10 million, which is still very healthy. Debt service funds. In 24, we've paid off 2 bonds, the Central Middle School 2005 bond as well as the 2022 GO bond. Those will both be paid off by the end of this year. We will not have a temporary loan for 25, so that payment is gone. However, tomorrow will be the sale of our bond that you approved a couple weeks ago. We're looking at the first year of principal and interest payments of about 9.9 million. While that's a significant increase, again, our financial advisors worked with us to make sure we can keep our tax rate the same, and that's what we're going to be able to do. In 2026, that principal and interest payment on the 24 bond will drop down somewhere in the low $3 million range. So that's being built in because we can afford to do that and keep our tax rate the same. That's why it's set so high that first year. The referendum bond, or better known as the high school debt service fund, it ends in 2029. We have a slight increase in our principal payment next year, which of course correlates to a lower interest payment. It's a $21,000 increase over this year, very insignificant. Referendum operating fund, we show an increase overall of 9.4%, 800,000. A big portion of that is within the teacher salary and benefit increase of 1.1 million. Support staff and benefit increase is stable. There's a slight decrease in the safety, security, and mental health salaries and benefits, and a big part of that is within the mental health portion of this budget. When you look at our actual expenditures for 24, we budgeted more for that for 25, and that's where that decrease comes in. And then within this, the professional services line, I apologize, $60,000 decrease, that is for a therapist that, Dr. Phillips, I ask you to correct me if I'm wrong, that has been moved to the education fund, is that correct?
Another fund.
And another fund. So, but again, we have an increase of 800,000 or 9.4%. Mr. Major, I believe at the last meeting you were asking about our SRO. Our SRO costs for 2025 are going up 7.5%. We have a 5% increase within this budget to cover a portion of that increase, and the other increase is going within the operations fund. Budget summary. The education fund, again, is a 6.5% increase. Operations at 12%. The debt service, a 33% increase, and again, a big portion of that is the first year bump on the 2024 bond that we're selling tomorrow. Referendum debt fund stays pretty stable, and then the referendum operating is up a little over 9% for a total increase of 10% in the overall tax-funded budgets. Looking at our reserves, again, Dr. Phillips explained a couple weeks ago, our reserves are very, very strong. Over $6 million in education in the rainy day fund, over $14 million in our operations fund. The operations referendum fund is over $3 million, and the debt funds has over $5 million in reserves. So very healthy. Tax rate history. Our advertised rate for this year is $1.195, which is slightly lower than the advertised rate for last year. We're anticipating our adopted rate to be somewhere near 9.985 or a little less. And again, we are well below the state average, which is pretty good for all that we're being able to do with this money. The next steps in this process, again, a month from now, we'll come back for the formal vote on the budget, and then by January 1, we'll have DLGF approval on what the official final budget is and our tax rates.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the team on 2025 budget?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, and you know, when we look at how long have we transferred funds from education to operations?
2018, I believe.
So about 6-7 years. So an amount that we're transferring is about anywhere from 7 to 9 million. I've heard so much stuff about the referendum in the last month that's not even something that's up for grabs today. It's a future thing. And one thing I was just thinking through is if we're transferring $7 to $9 million from education to operations, but our referendum is bringing money into education, ultimately to education, because a large part of it is going to teacher salaries. Because we're transferring out of education to operations, if we'd have left that money there, it seems like we'd had enough money to pay the increase in the teacher pay. It seems like operations is where we're either overspending or undertaxing. And so my question is, you know, it's not going to impact the budget of today, but it's going to impact the next couple of years, our thoughts and strategic direction on how we approach a future referendum. How do we look at not taking money out of the education fund for operations, leaving the money there, and then addressing the problem, which is appears to be, to me at least, in operations side?
So we can control the expenditure side on the operation side of that budget. So if we did exactly what you're suggesting, which is don't transfer money from the education fund to the operations fund, instead leave that money there to pay the teacher salary portion of the referendum, and then either increase your revenues or decrease your expenditures on the operation side. We have no control over the revenue side of that. It's capped by Indiana code. So this year, the maximum it could increase was 4%. So we would essentially be looking for $7 to $9 million in the operations fund to cut from the expenditure side.
Okay, so is there anything we can do to talk to the state about how that number is managed in the future?
Yes, we work with local legislators often and through
Today,
our lobbying
Todd,
organizations.
you're on the state committee, right? You're the one that would work with the state legislators right now?
Yeah, for the next 3 months.
Yeah, for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
I know that's not going to help us for 2 years from now, but
No.
it might. My big concern is this, right? You know, every person that I've talked to in the last 3 months has complained about their property taxes going up this year. Every person. And it doesn't matter if they're blue, red, purple, green. It does not matter what color their politics are. Every person I've talked to has said, I'm paying more in property taxes and I don't like it. They understand where the money goes. They just don't, with everything else that's being the cost of inflation and the cost of living now is just through the roof. And so my fear is this. Doesn't matter what this board decides. If you put it on a ballot in the future, you're leaving it to the voters to vote yes or no. And there's a lot of risk there. So that's why, to me, if we can talk to the state and we can try and figure out an alternate solution between now and then, can we find a way to minimize the impact? I mean, we're not changing the tax rate today, but our taxes our costs just went up 11%. So there's got to be money there. It's how is the state allowing us to use it? And in this case, I think you're able to show pretty good justification as to why you need it. I mean, you got a 30% increase in utilities. Can you control that? Nope. Are they going to go regulate Duke? It's not, I mean, that's just not, we know that's not how it's going to work. So I think that's where talking with legislature might help us to bring light to that so that over the next year and a half, 2 years, they have an opportunity to think it through and come up with a good solution from a state level so we don't run the risk of putting a referendum out there that might not pass.
Okay. Any other questions?
This one is tricky too, because if you could go back a couple of slides on the reserves. This one's hard. That operating referendum is, when that question was asked that, you know, it's, can the money, we want more money for teacher pay, and what was it, school safety, school buses, STEM, and like that, those 3 or 4 things. I don't know why we have reserves for that. I've struggled with it for the last year and a half as to why we've got 3.3. If I was a teacher that taught for the last 3 years and I knew I was supposed to get another $500 a year, I would want my $500 a year out of that. And so for me, I look at it 2 ways. I don't think that, my opinion, you guys can try and convince me otherwise. I don't think the operating referendum should carry a reserve. I think that's money that we said we had very specific needs and use for, and sitting collecting interest was not one of them. And I think the average person thought that that money was going to go straight to teachers and whatnot. So I don't know if that was not negotiated well during bargaining. I don't know if it's just sitting there to sit there. My thoughts are you got 2 things you can do with it. You can take that money for the last 3 years and distribute it out to every teacher that worked the last 3 years, or you give it back to taxpayers.
So we have talked about, thank you, Mr. Major, we have talked about this one a couple of different times and have worked with the Teachers Association to ensure that at the end of 2028, calendar year 2028 is the last year we can collect property taxes in this fund under the referendum that was passed in 2020. And so those, but our contract with those teachers for that school year runs from August, or September through August, we'll say. And so if for some reason, as you mentioned, the voters have to decide if we're going to renew this operating referendum or not at some point in the next handful of years. We wanted to make sure we can fulfill the obligations we have to teachers that are contracted for that I guess it would be the 28-29 school year. And so those teachers that start then in September, they get their first paycheck in September. If for some reason the voters did not pass the renewal, there would be enough cash to still pay out those obligations through the end of that contract. Now, of course, we would have to negotiate the next year to see what that was going to look like. But both CEA leadership and us have agreed to make sure that we build enough of a balance and maintain it so that when we get to the end, we can make sure that everyone gets paid what their contract says they would get paid.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the points that was brought to me was, if you're a teacher teaching today that's taught 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, they retire in 27 and don't make it to 28, they would have had 5 to 6 years where they view it as though that money was withheld from them. So that's the tricky part, right?
Yeah, and you could say the same thing on the
Yeah.
education and operations side too, the cash
Yeah.
balances that have grown.
No disagreement, no disagreement.
If I
So-
can add one thing, Mr. Major, some of that reserve cash balance is for costs that haven't come in yet. The buses that were a part of that as part of the '24 budget, we've not paid for those yet. So when those come in, that will reduce that reserve amount.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have another, yep, go ahead.
Sorry. I've got, I think, a two-part question. It's slightly less complex than Mr. Major's. And I think this is probably most appropriate for you, Dr. Phillips. I remember a number of staff positions being added with the ESSER money. So the two-parter is, one, can you maybe refresh my memory of an approximate number of staff that were added with the ESSER funds? And then two, have the bulk or the vast majority of those positions, maybe not the people, but the positions, have they been retained?
Good questions. I'm going to give you rough estimates on numbers. We had targets in the first year of ESSER funding that I want to say the target was 42 additional positions that we thought we could afford in year one. And so that would have been in calendar year 21, I believe. Knowing that we would not be able to afford to carry 42 positions onto the education fund, 3 years later. And so the first year is around 40, low 40s. And our intention with every one of those positions was to make sure that they were truly additive. And so we looked at, staffing in a first grade classroom where obviously there'd be a lot of support needed for some kids that hadn't been in kindergarten class the year before. And so looked at those and said, okay, if we would normally be at 23 to 27 kids, then how can we make sure we lower that, particularly in our title schools? And so we looked at primary grades, title schools, special ed, and EL. And then we tried to make all of those additive positions. So we staffed normally and said, okay, here's an additional spot. And then we also did a core math, science, English, and social studies at both high schools. We went from about 42 positions the first year to around 35, and then to 20. And then the last year of funding for that, I believe we were somewhere in the neighborhood of 14. And honestly, by the time we got to that point, those were not all truly additive. And so I believe we ended up retaining about 8 of those positions, all of them at North. The math, science, English, and social studies, North numbers were just so much higher than normal. So starting from the low 40s down to about 15 in the last year and kept around 8.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from this team? Okay, it's open again for public comments or questions on the budget, if there are any. Yep, you can just go on up there if you want, just so everybody can hear. Sorry, Cole. Thank you.
Hey, it's Cole Bennett from Columbus. I just had a quick question about classified staff. Can you explain what that is? Thank you.
Sure. Sorry for the educational jargon. We used to call them support staff in the district. So it was anyone who didn't have a teaching license or an administrative license. And so anything from a bus driver to a custodian to a teaching assistant, all non-certified positions. A couple of years ago, we changed that to start referring to them as classified staff.
Okay. Good question. Any other questions?
I was going to speak on the budget with the public comment. I guess I could go
Yeah.
ahead and do it
Yep.
now. Just
Yep.
to stay on trend.
Sure. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christina Eversole. I am a parent in BCSC. Thanks for having me. I have 3 children at BCSC, one in pre-K, one in the special ed at Parkside, one in 6th grade at Schmidt. Yeah, love those kids, and I know you all do too. I guess I'll go ahead and start off by saying a society grows best when old men plant trees in whose shade they shall never sit. That's a Greek proverb. Like many parents in the BCSC school district and across the nation, it is evident that something has gone awry in the educational environment we place our children in today. Knowing that my children may not come home to me in the same way I sent them to school is traumatic at best. Our family has already had to transfer our youngest child this school year due to being assaulted physically with little to no communication from staff. I was horrified and sad for my child and the other child involved. Her father and I acted on her behalf. That is our duty, to protect, love, and keep each one of our children safe. We don't expect utopian ideals when they leave our home, but there is a level of conduct that we expect from the people who care for them. Rest assured, the situation was handled beautifully by administration. From child to parent to staff, compromise and accountability was made. I believe in our public schools, although I had a private school education. However, this is not the first or last time we have personally experienced violence in the schools or have heard about it firsthand from trusted sources, teachers, parents, and otherwise. Any threat, carried out or not, is unnerving. It's a sobering feeling when your own children's school makes the news. Whether the threats of violence heard across the community were inflated or not, this is a symptom of a larger issue within our school system. I won't waste anyone's time giving in to the political grandstanding or subduing whatever societal boogeyman lurks in the minds of certain community members. That is a large reason why our children and our educators remain last on the list of priorities, no matter what campaign promises may say. What I can see and speak on, based on personal experience as a mother and a former student myself, is that we are largely failing our future. If you want to look at the health of any civilization, look to the well-being of the children. In a not so distant future, these will be our hopeful leaders, civil servants, doctors, scientists, frontline workers, teachers, caregivers, lawmakers, visionaries, and architects of our society. While there is emphasis on the budget and the improvements made to our schools, it is truly a vain effort if what is on the inside is crumbling. And qualified instructors who chose education as a vocation are exiting en masse, while our taxes increase significantly year after year. Our educational brain, the teachers, aides, social workers, and other school workers clearly do not have the support that they need to give priority to the heart of every school, and that is the children. So what good will it do to fix the outside if the inside is clearly broken? This is a top-down issue. Banned books, some say. Our children can't even read or use proper penmanship. Indiana ranks as one of the least educated states in the nation. Our literacy and mathematics test scores hover under 50%, according to data. I can't even begin to understand the logistics, pressure, and responsibility it takes to run a growing school district of almost 12,000 bright and growing children. But I do understand common sense. And I know we fail our children when we don't invest in our educators or let them do their jobs through the ethics of dignity, compassionate discipline, and a united front from home to classroom. As a community, parents, caregivers, and BCSC as a whole, we owe it to our future to make lasting changes systemically and structurally from the bottom all the way to the top. Children need us. They are the best. They deserve the best. I won't pull my children from BCSC, but we are the adults in the room, and it's time that we start acting like it. I thank every single educator or otherwise who takes the time, their own personal money, their health, their safety, and resources to show up for them every day. You have my gratitude, you have my respect, and you have my support. I believe as a community, parents, and the school district, we can help our children and we can help our future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Eversole. Thank you. Are there any other comments on the budget public hearing for right now? No? Okay. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have transportation update. Dr. Bozeman.
Good evening. I will, as Mr. McKean is making his way up here, reintroduce to you A.J. McKean as our manager of transportation. And we have a couple of our amazing bus drivers here, Catherine Cooper, whom I think you'll get a chance to hear from, and Debbie Gray, who's also in the audience. AJ may tell you, but our buses travel nearly 8,000 miles a day, and our department is in very good standing with a lot of tremendous people who do great things for kids every day. So I'll get out of the way and let him give you an update on the department.
Good evening. So just a little tidbit of what we do every day. BCSC has 150 employees in the transportation department. We have 120 school buses, haul approximately 8,000 students a day, and travel 1.5 million miles a year. So we've got busy days every day. We travel lots of miles, and we take what we do very seriously in getting our kids safely to and from school. This is my third year in the position as a manager. When I first took over, I quickly realized that our routing software that we were using to keep track of all the students was insufficient for what we do. We, unlike most school corporations, do not just haul K through 12 kids on one bus to and from school every day. We have lots of special programs at BCSC, and it takes a very complex software to be able to track where those kids go every day. And we realized that the software that we had, it would no longer do that. So in May of 22, we began looking for a new software, quickly found out that there was no out-of-box software that would work for our transportation department. And after researching with my staff, office staff, and IT here at BCSC, we narrowed it down to 2 different vendors that would be able to provide the information and the software that we needed. Ultimately, the last one that we chose was the only one that would allow us to use the tablets that we currently owned and put their software on the tablets. So in October of 22, we signed a contract with TransFinder. TransFinder's been in the software business routing students for over 30 years. The one that we walked away from had only been in the business a handful of years. So we went from somebody who didn't have very much experience and basically was building their software around what we needed to somebody who'd been doing it for a long time and was old hat to them. So in January of 23, we began implementation process. I have 3 gentlemen in the routing and planning department, and they devoted hours and hours, and is still devoting hours and hours of their time into making this software and working with getting our kids in the system, and so the schools, parents, and the bus drivers can see where the kids need to go. So as you can tell, initially we uploaded the current routes from EZR, which was our software before. We communicated with the software company, TransFinder, what was expected, and we reviewed changes with that company. In August, we did a soft start. We had some test routes that we ran the tablets on We wanted to check out to see how, one, the connectivity with the tablets, cellular connectivity was working, the test drivers, we wanted their feedback, and we also had some test families that were out there that we were contacting that were giving us feedback on how things were working out. So this is a little picture of what the tablet looks like in the bus. Now, everything that we put on a bus outside of what comes from the factory has to be approved by the Indiana State School Bus Committee. So up until the past few years, the tablets have been able to be on a bus, but they had to go black when the bus started moving. So up in the past, I would say up 3 years ago, the state changed it to where the actual screens could stay basically like your phone is in your car when you're following it to get to a destination. So it's within driver's reach, as you can tell, the driver reaching from the driver's seat, and the picture next to it kind of gives you a synopsis of what the driver initially sees before the route stops or starts. So it gives turn-by-turn, stop-by-stop directions audibly and visibly. It also gives student pictures, student names, and it will also detour you around if there are traffic issues in the area. So it's very, very user-friendly. A lot of the drivers, our constant battle is, I drive my route every day, why do I need to use the tablet? Well, also our routing and planning department uses the information from the tablet every day to update the bus driver's routes if things change. So in January of '24, we went live with the entire school corporation with TransFinder. So this not only allowed the schools to be able to enter their new registered students, but all the staff had to be trained at the schools to work the new software. Also, in the shopping process of the new software, I wanted something that was replacing all the different kinds of software we had in the department. The maintenance software, the trip tracking software that did athletic trips, sports runs, field trips, all that stuff. I wanted to replace everything so I could have one dashboard that I could look to see what was going on in my entire department instead of going to multiple different pieces of software to be able to see that. So we started in February, Trip Finder, which is the software that schedules the trips. It also bills the school entities, outside entities that use our buses, and it generates trip sheets for the drivers that all the information has for where they need to go, their times, and they record their mileage and all that for the billing purposes. In March, we started the Service Finder. Service Finder is what the shop uses. It tracks all the services for the school buses, parts inventory, it does everything that we need to do to keep track of the maintenance on the bus. The drivers are also on the tablet, can submit a work ticket through Service Finder, and it goes straight to the shop. So if they have an issue with the bus, it's all done digitally. There's no paperwork involved when that happens. So in August of this year, we went live with the Stop Finder app, which is an app that the parents can download on their phones that gives notifications of when the bus is arriving in the area and also allows us to communicate directly with the parents. So I believe I have a short video, kind of tells you what Stop Finder does.
Wouldn't it be great if you always knew where the school bus was? Well, thanks to an app called Stop Finder, you'll know your child is safe in real time. You can also set up an alert zone, and Stop Finder will let you know when the bus is getting close. With Stop Finder, you'll have direct, two-way communication with your school's transportation department. You'll know if the bus is running late, and you'll be notified of any changes. Stop wondering. Go to stopfinder.com.
So currently we have approximately 2,500 parents that use Stop Finder app every day. We do get calls if something happens and the bus isn't there on time, because they rely on those notifications. So we actually, it is up and running and it does work. So it's new. We'll probably send out more notifications probably after Christmas break and see if we can get more parents involved and want to wanting to see what's going on. We can also limit what the parents can see as far as, I mean, we want to be careful because we don't want people to be chasing the school buses down. So we can actually limit the geo field of where they can see the bus when it comes to their house and not the entire bus route. So if it's within 5 minutes of their house, depending on if it's an in-town route or an out-of-town route, we can adjust those geo fences to make sure that we don't have any people, we're not putting the students' safety at risk of people chasing down a bus or following a bus around. Also, something a little different, BCSC has always put safety at the top for our school buses. We've purchased since 2009 3-point seatbelts on our buses, and up until 2022 was the first year that every bus in the school corporation was equipped with seatbelt seats. So that being said, in October of 23, the Ohio Traffic Safety Office reached out to me and wanted some feedback. Unfortunately, when that stuff happens, generally it's because of a tragedy. So they had a school bus accident resulting in a fatality in August of that year. So immediately the governor of Ohio put together a working group that wanted to address safety features, seat belts, what could they do to help prevent a bus fatality. Ultimately, buses are really and truly the safest vehicles on the road. They're designed to roll over 3 times without the roof collapsing on them. The compartmentalization, even without seat belts, is designed to keep the kids safe. So we traveled to Ohio in November of 23 and met with the governor's safety group. They kind of had, I thought, was some out-of-world ideas. When they originally were talking, they wanted to pass a law to retrofit all the buses in the state of Ohio with seat belts, which is very unrealistic because it kind of sounds easy to put seat belts in a seat, but a seat belt seat is designed totally different than what a regular school bus seat is. It's the way it's mounted to the floor, it's the way it collapses in an accident. It's all designed totally different. So I think once they met many times, they realized that this was an unrealistic thing that they were wanting to do. So there is currently one Ohio school district is doing a seat belt pilot program. So we do have he's called a citizen representative that's reached out to me several times. I've seen him at several conferences. That's very proactive in the student safety in Ohio, and he seems very pleased in what has happened in the governor's group. So anyways, in November, Catherine, one of the bus drivers, and I traveled to Columbus, Ohio. She spoke with the group. There's a set group that met multiple times a month, and when she was there, they had brought in several different people that dealt with students every day, different bus drivers, specifically us, that dealt with seatbelts every day. So the picture that you see up there is her talking to, actually, I believe that is the governor, asking questions of what her experiences were with seatbelts. Anything you want to say, Catherine? Any questions for Catherine and her experience in Columbus with the Ohio Traffic Safety Committee?
Any questions? She's sitting down. She didn't want to question.
The only question I had, there was a picture, right, with the hand reaching for the tablet. I'm assuming that it's like a navigation in a car. Right. So once you're moving, you're not going to be pushing buttons, but if you stop, yes, you can say picked up, dropped off.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
That's all I
yeah.
want to make sure.
The goal is we can take attendance with that at a bus stop. We don't push that at this point. The goal ultimately is to use student IDs, scan in, scan off. That's the point that hopefully we can get to, which would help immensely for student tracking. If we got a lost student, we just punch it up on the computer. Hey, this kiddo got on such and such bus. So we're moving that direction. But yes, yeah, we don't we want hands off unless you're stopped at a bus stop and absolutely have to. If not, please pull off the road and address any issues with your tablet. Don't try to do it while driving down the road.
The software example showed that you have the ability to send push notifications.
Yes.
Can you give an example of a time or a set of times where we might do that, and if we have any experience with
So
those?
if there's a substitute driver on a bus that's running behind, we can send out notifications to that parent, those parents that are utilizing the app on that, because it'll just send it specifically to that bus route that, hey, this bus driver is running behind, because, I mean, we don't get too specific, but yes.
The numbers are always amazing to me, the number of miles per day and per year. And I thank you and I thank the drivers for what they do every day. It's just amazing. I did want to ask, in addition to this update, if you could give us a brief real quick on bus cameras and our use of cameras. I know we've outside the bus as well as inside the bus.
Yes, we have what's called a 360 camera. It is on the outside of the bus. We've had those for 5 years. So the view of those 360 cameras comes up in the big rear view mirror that's the driver looks at to see the students behind them. So the way those cameras work, if you turn on your left turn signal, the left camera lights up, right turn signal, same way. If you put the stop arm out, it lights up the entire perimeter of the bus. So basically it's giving you, the driver, the view of basically all the danger zones. So if this is the bus, side of the bus, it's looking straight down the bus, which is somewhere where the driver cannot necessarily see. So that's the same way with the front, same way with the back, and that's what that 360 camera provides. On the inside of the bus, of course we have stop arm cameras now, which unbelievably, it hasn't slowed anything down. It's an increase. And it's only because we've asked the drivers to be very diligent on reporting that stuff, because we're coming after them. So we do have that tool. We use it every day. As a matter of fact, I do have one staff member that's her job every day. That's what she does. I mean, I had to hire her specifically to do stop arm violations. So inside cameras, we're actually transferring to a new company that is all cloud-based. It's called Radio Engineering Incorporated. So we can actually have the capability of dialing live into a bus. So if there is an incident going on a bus that needs addressed live, just off the wall, somebody with a gun or something that we need to log in live, we have that capability to see what's going on the bus. Now this will be a process as we get new buses that we're changing this camera system over, but if we have to pull video from a bus, we can do it at any point in time. I mean, we can log into the bus and pull video for an incident that happens, but the logging in live is really nice. I mean, I'm not there to spy on what the drivers are doing. I don't have time to do that, but it's there in case of an emergency situation. I think it'll be well worth it if needed.
Thank you.
Just as a reminder, Mr. Stenner, the stop arm violations, we do work with CPD and send those directly to the prosecutor in those situations. And Mr. McKean's right, the frequency is not decreasing, unfortunately.
Mr. McKeon or Ms. Copper, is there anything else that you could think of that you would want to retrofit buses or our systems with to improve safety of our kids?
To be honest, we are way above the curve. I mean, we do everything that most school corporations do not do. I mean, as far as seat belts, the camera systems, the 360 view, we are very fortunate that the school board has allowed us to fit our buses with the equipment that we've got. I mean, there really isn't, safety-wise, I mean, the new buses are coming out with collision avoidance systems. I mean, rollover protection. They'll actually, if a bus takes a turn too sharp, it'll actually disengage the drivetrain. I mean, this is stuff that's coming from the factory that we're not asking for. This is stuff that's just rolling out the door. So we're getting top of the line stuff. I don't know if there's anything else that I could ask you to make it what we do any safer.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other questions? Appreciate the update. Okay, Dr. Stahlbaum.
Good evening, thank you. We are excited to present an update of BCSC's transition to teaching programs. Lisa Haynes and Liz Stroh are the backbone of the programs, and thus they will be providing that information to you. And then they will also be facilitating some testimonials from some of our T2T staff members. At a high level, BCSC has engaged in 2 different pathway models. One pathway model is a para-pathway model, and those are for paraprofessionals pursuing an undergraduate degree, so they did not have a previous degree. It is a 3 to 4 year program through St. Mary of the Woods, and we currently have 7 BCSC paraprofessionals in that program, and Lisa will provide additional information about that program. Our other model is a T2T pathway model. That is for paraprofessionals with a higher education degree. So if you have a bachelor's degree, a master's, or a PhD in another content area and you'd like to be a teacher, this is a pathway model for you. That is a 12 to 18-month program through Indiana State University. We have currently 13 BCSC teachers in that program. So with that, I will hand it over to Lisa Haynes.
So our journey started in the summer of, where do I hit? This one? I'm going to end up shutting down the whole slideshow. Our journey started in the summer of 2021. We began the partnership with St. Mary's of the Woods to create a pathway for our paraprofessionals to become certified teachers. We put a call out for information about the program and an application process, and asked building administrators to encourage the paraprofessionals in their buildings to please apply. In July of 2021, we received 48 applications. We interviewed 26 of those individuals. 7 of them we selected to be as part of our first cohort. August of 2021 then, those 7 paraprofessionals are enrolled at St. Mary's of the Woods College. They're pursuing certification in elementary and special education. The special ed is all grade, pre-K to 12th, and our elementary people will be certified to teach in the elementary buildings, elementary curriculum or special ed curriculum. And in addition to that, our program, throughout this time, we've provided ongoing professional development opportunities for our folks. We have PD sessions for them. We cover, and that's all run in-house, so we're not pulling in outside people or paying outside people. We're using our staff that we have here within BCSC to help with that. So we cover topics like how to manage classroom behaviors, techniques to keep students engaged, professional responsibilities, and our evaluation process. Our next scheduled session is for October 3rd, in which we're going to cover the teacher success rubric with a UDL focus. And this session is going to be presented by Dr. Starbong, Ms. Stroll, and myself. Okay. And it was this button? Yes. Okay. So here you have our first cohort of people, the 7 BCSC teachers, and they're going to be with license to teach by August of 2025. I have a testimony from Braden Swim-Simmons, who is at Richards Elementary. And as you can read from his testimony that he has shared with everyone, this is a life-altering experience for him. It's giving him a wonderful opportunity, and he's very, very thankful for it. It's not a path he would have been able to go on without this program. Now, I'm going to introduce to you another amazing individual that we have from our program, Alonza Chino. Alonza is at North High School in the special education department, and she's going to be student teaching in the spring, and she's going to share her experience with the program with you.
Hello, everybody. I just want to say that I'm very thankful for this program. It has given me great focus and motivation to reach my goal of becoming a teacher. I've had this dream since I was, in elementary school, so without this program, I wouldn't have been able to do that. It has also really improved my knowledge of teaching and the skills I will need to be a successful teacher. And because of this program, I just look forward to working many more years with BCSC. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce my other partner in crime, Liz Stroh.
Good evening. All right. So our transition to teaching model was introduced to the Pathways program in the summer of 2022. We began with a partnership with St. Mary's of the Woods College, and the original cohort was comprised of 10 individuals who were identified after applications and the interview processes were complete. The first 10 participants began coursework in August of 2022. After a year of classes, 8 finished the program. They took over their own classes in BCSC schools and are currently still serving in those roles successfully as fully certified teachers. The next cohort was created in the summer of 2023. Unlike the first group, they pursued their coursework with the district's new university partner, Indiana State University. This group was derived from an applicant pool of 13 individuals that was later distilled down to 6 participants. From this group, 5 are currently finishing their program and are teaching in their own classrooms. They are projected to be fully certified and licensed by December of 2024. Similar to the 4-year cohort, the T2T cohorts received ongoing professional development, mentorship, while pursuing their teaching license and certification. So one of the most appealing aspects of the T2T program is that it fills our need to staff critical positions within our district. And we can staff those positions with our currently highly qualified staff members who are within our corporation. Our T2T cohorts are actively serving as teachers in 5 elementary classrooms, 1 elementary Spanish immersion classroom, 2 special education positions, including 1 life skills, 2 secondary science positions, and also secondary language arts, foreign language, and social studies. So this is a statement from one of our first T2T participants, Kimberly Owen. Kimberly was recognized as the first Olympian of the Week at Columbus East High School. This is awarded to teachers who have been nominated by their students and their colleagues for demonstrating excellence in the classroom and reflects the exceptional talent we are bringing to our corporation through this program. I would now like to introduce Veronica Partida Garcia.
Hello, my name is Veronica Partida. I work as a Legado kindergarten teacher right now. To explain what T2T means to me, I need to say that I strongly believe that any student can be successful if he has someone who believes in them and someone who teaches them how to believe in themselves. And that's what T2T meant to me. It's a new opportunity to be something else. I'm a former chemist in Mexico. So once that I come here, I didn't know that I could do anything else. And it's a new opportunity. Once at the beginning, it was difficult. I doubt myself, but I have really great people. They believe in me. They cheer for me. And I start to change my mindset. And I said, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can. As long as I went through the process, I start to feel more confident. I start to realize that, you know what? I can do this. And now, as a teacher, I know how hard we work and how much care we put in our kids. And I don't only feel more admiration and proud. I right now feel like we're doing something else, something special. And in my opinion, teachers are changing the world, one kid at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Originally, Tracy Liege was planned to be a part of our presentation, but unfortunately, she has a sick child at home, so she could not join us. But I will tell you a little bit about Tracy. So Tracy did her para experience in the ED class at Smith, and she is currently excelling as an LRC teacher at CSA Fadria, which again demonstrates how our T2T program is able to fill positions which perhaps have been traditionally difficult to fill in the past. And they're doing an exceptional job in them. I'm going to hand this back to Dr. Stahlbaum.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Veronica and Alonza and Liz and Lisa. So our pathway to teaching for classified staff, again, we have those two different models. What we would like to do is propose a cohort 3 for the transition to teaching model only through Indiana State University to begin in the upcoming spring semester utilizing our Title II funds. And I want to again thank you and celebrate your accomplishments, and I think that it deserves a round of applause. As they stated, teachers are champions for everyone. Thank you very much. So at this time, again, we thank you for your support and are open for any questions.
I have a question. I just want to thank both Ms. Gino and Ms. Garcia for being here, and your testimonials were just very moving, so thank you very much for that. Could you, having both gone through the program, could you offer any suggestions or any challenges that you had along the way that maybe we can learn from as we potentially move forward with another cohort?
Honestly, just continued support. Liz and Lisa are amazing, and then just knowing that, you know, we always have somebody to ask questions to. I mean, we've had like, you know, some miscommunications like with some of our teachers and stuff. I mean, and it's just like little things that they go out of their way on just to be able to be there. So just having continued support from both of them, I feel like it's essential.
Thank you. Anything, Ms. Garcia? No? Okay. Do we offer mentors as they enter into the classrooms? Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. And then my other question, I'll leave it to my team, sorry, is we're moving forward, or you're making a recommendation for a cohort on T2T, but not for the para program. Can you just say a little bit about that decision?
Mm-hmm. Yes, the para program at St. Mary of the Woods, and I'm going to look at Lisa, and she's going to nod if I start veering off from the path, but it is no longer available in the design that we once had. And so moving to Indiana State University, who has that program available for the T2T, would be the path forward for us, and then we need to continue to explore what university partnerships have the para pathway program available if we'd like to explore another cohort with that design.
Okay, good. And I lied, I have one more question. Can you tell me a little bit about the application and selection process? How do you choose?
Actually, I'm going to kick that over to Liz to answer that question.
Sure. So what we've done in the past, and we plan to do if this is approved, we post an announcement publicly asking for applicants, and that job is actually posted on the BCSC website. One of the things that's really great about our T2T program is that it allows working adults to pursue their education. And that's actually why T2T was designed, right? We're looking for people who have a skill set from a previous degree or job experience that could possibly be applied in the classroom. So we're finding those people, and they're able to work for us and hone their skills within our classrooms. So we put out an advertisement, and we also ask building level administrators to recruit paraprofessionals that are currently in their building that they think might be a good fit for the program, and encourage them to apply. Once we get the applications, we select applicants. We select from the applicant pool those individuals who we think best meet the criteria for the people that we think could be successful in the program. And then those people are interviewed by a panel of administrators. Those administrators then put in a recommendation for who they think would be good people to pursue for our program. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, team, any other questions?
But first of all, I want to say this. In a time when our schools of education around the state are not putting out enough teachers, I think this is a win-win-win for our district and for these wonderful individuals we heard testimonies from, and for our students. So I just commend you for what seems to me like stepping out of the box to solve a problem instead of complaining about it. Although we complain about it too, but still. I have, I think, 3 questions. So are there other districts around the state that are doing the para pathways? And is that part of your search for looking for another vendor, for lack of a better word?
Yes, there are several districts who had the para pathway model and the T2T model, and they are all in that similar exploration phase that we are with, moving forward with the T2T model and then continuing to explore the para pathway model.
And so the T2T is now partnered with Indiana State. So what exactly is their role? It sounds like you all are doing a lot here, but what is Indiana State doing?
They teach the courses. So
they're online courses?
That's right. They teach the courses, and then they oversee the student teaching, and then the degree comes from Indiana State University.
Okay. And my final question I'm curious about, and I don't expect you would have this answer off the top of your head, but I'm curious what % of our paraprofessionals already have a 4-year degree so that the T2T fits for them?
We don't know. We don't know, but more than we probably anticipate.
I don't have the answer on that.
But I would think it's a fair number just from my own experience. But
I would agree with your assumption, and I will need to gather additional information to be accurate.
Because the T2T fits for them, but if they don't have a 4-year degree, then the para pathway is what they would do. Right?
That's correct.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation.
Nice to meet you. Okay. We have school board member reports. Mr. Bryant, do you have anything in your committees? Mr. Major?
We haven't had a health trust meeting in a while. There was redevelopment. There was a meeting last week downtown on the housing study. I wasn't able to attend that, but they're going to have another go at that at the October Redevelopment Commission. So from what I understand, it's basically telling us stuff we already know, which is there's not enough houses here. So other than that, I don't have anything.
I've got 2. The Districting and Facilities Committee continues to meet and do its work on both districting issues and facility issues with Dr. Bozeman's leadership. And that work is kind of divided up now between general work across the district and then a whole subset of work that has to do specifically with the new West Side Elementary. So that work continues to go well. Second committee is the Business Advisory Group. And Mr. Edwards has used the last couple meetings to sort of strategically take a look at the initiatives that we ought to be focusing on, and then getting that input from the community, in particular the business community, as to which initiatives make sense to them, what initiatives they would be in support of.
Thank you. I serve on the Diversity Council, and I sent my apologies to Mr. Edwards. I was actually in United Way Jail in my plant, so it's $1 a minute, and I was in there for 3.5 hours, and there's no phones or computers. So I missed the meeting, and I apologize for that. He did give me an update that I will share. However, we did get to add several new members to the team that bring some new perspectives, so we seem really excited to have them join the group. And a lot of time was spent on thinking through how we use our professional development days this year and educate, help people with our diversity topics in the school system. So be looking for those coming up later this year. Mr. Grimes.
Two quick updates from the School Foundation. The School Foundation is pleased to announce the official hiring of a new executive director. Deepti Agashi Vijayakumar is in and getting started and working with administration and out making community connections, and also furiously starting work on, this is probably the third or fourth meeting in a row, I've said mark your calendars, we're a month and a half away, Sunday, November 10, the School Foundation's largest fundraiser of the year, a fun afternoon of basketball shenanigans with the Wizards at Columbus East High School. Ticket information to be out soon.
Mr. Nella.
The Indiana University Columbus Advisory Board met for their very first meeting ever since the separation from the Purdue part of that. And a couple of things from that. There were quite a few reports, but two things I wanted to share. One is Dr. Ryan Brewer, who's the head of the business division and also a Columbus East graduate. He gave a report on the status of the business division there, which is, if not the largest, one of the largest divisions at this local campus. And Dr. Brewer was also an integral part of bringing the sports program to IU Columbus, because he saw the potential that that had not only to help students, but to help with their branding and to help with, to bring in more students. And partly because of that, the new sports programs, the enrollment is up slightly, and the number of hours taken is up significantly, because in order to participate in those sports, they have to have a certain number of credit hours. Another interesting topic that came up as a result of them no longer being partnered with Purdue, they no longer have an engineering degree that they offer locally, so they're beginning to look at possibly replacing that with a degree in informatics or computer science, and they're weighing the pros and cons of either of those.
Okay, cabinet reports.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present additional information on the IDOE Employee Injury Report. As has been noted, the report from the Indiana Department of Education was generated from the gathering of data of school corporations through data exchange, and the request was to determine the number of incidents when an employee's injury was required to be reported to the public schools workers' compensation carrier, the number of incidents when an employee's injury caused them to miss all or part of one or more workdays, the number of incidents when an employee's injury was required to be reported to the public school pursuant to the public schools reporting policy, and the number of incidents in aggregate. So that is what is stated in those Indiana codes that you see on the screen. BCSC reported each category of our first reports of injury, and we are going to go through the disaggregation of those categories today. On the bottom of the triangle, you will see that we reported 124 information-only first reports of injury. So what does information only mean? Information only means that anytime a student and a staff member had an incident, that staff member went to our nurse, and our school nurse reported this incident in our reporting system. We have a very comprehensive and inclusive workplace culture where we are wanting to report every incident for safety purposes. We send all of these reports to our workers' compensation provider, and we work with our workers' compensation provider to understand the disaggregation of all of these different types of claims that we send their way. So we sent 124 information-only first reports of injury, which did not result in a staff member needing medical treatment. That was a component of those 142 first reports of injury on the Indiana School Employee Injury Report. Of those 142 first reports of injury, we had 18 medical-only first reports of injury. Those 18 medical-only claims did result in a staff member going to the nurse and the staff member or the nurse or both determining that they wanted to seek additional medical care at our occupational health provider. So that would be inclusive of those 18. An indemnity report is when a staff member would need to miss work days due to an injury, and we had 0 indemnity reports. We do know, and this information, or this slide has the same information just presented in a table. We do know that whereas other school corporations in Indiana reported only the medical and indemnity claims, BCSC reported all 3 categories of our claims, which resulted in those 142 inclusive, comprehensive, safe workplace culture reports of injury. With that stated, some of the steps that we take at BCSC to analyze this data in a disaggregated way is to engage in quarterly meetings with our workers' compensation provider, and so we do that to analyze trends and determine improvement actions. We are going to integrate employee injury data into our district performance dashboard. We do collaborate with the CEA and district leadership, and we talk about safe work and learning environments. We have spoken about this report. And then we also are engaging with the Indiana Department of Education to further define the reporting parameters for this report. This is the first time they've asked for this data, and thus we are working with them to further operationally define what to submit in the future. So with that, are there any questions?
I've got a couple things, Dr. Stahlbaum. So I think it was in the second slide, perhaps. Yeah, under other school corporations in Indiana reported the medical and indemnity claims only. Would it also be fair to add to that other school corporations in Indiana reported nothing?
Yes. There were several school corporations in Indiana, over 100, that did not report the information.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that speaks to collaborating with the Indiana Department of Education on the report and, again, further to define what the request is.
Well, and that was going to be, I guess, my second comment more than a question was that I appreciated that last bullet point there of engaging with the Department of Education, because I would say I've been in the business long enough to see plenty of school education data to paint less than an accurate, consistent picture, and this obviously more than fits that category. And so engaging with them so everybody's reporting the same things and that all are reporting would be, yes, because this is far from comparing apples to apples. So thank you.
I appreciate it.
So I appreciate the clarification. And I have to say it's terribly disappointing that the DOE would even put out such an incomplete and misleading report. I don't know if your conversations have gone far enough with them to know if their intention was for school districts to do what we did or to do what some of the other districts did in terms of just reporting the top 2 tiers of that.
That question is still being defined, and so the conversation has went there, but that has not been completely defined for us yet.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Newland, Dale, the information that I've heard is that we should expect to see legislation this spring to clarify the intent of the legislative action from before and exactly what the ramifications are if districts do not submit their data.
Thank you.
Aaron, just to help me, I'm sorry, Dr. Stahlbaum, that wasn't nice.
That's okay.
Can you give me maybe an example of a case, and it can be made up, that, of a situation that would be in that bottom category and then one that would be in the middle category?
Sure. So information only, let's say that a staff member opens the door for students and students are going out to the door to recess. And a staff member and the student bump into one another upon exiting the door. Staff member might bump into the door. We would have the staff member go to the nurse, and there may be an ice pack that's provided, maybe there's a Band-Aid that's provided, maybe it's just, hey, I bumped into the door, a student bumped into me, I bumped into the door. That would be included in the information-only claim. That is in our reporting culture, that we would report that, and all of that gets aggregated and sent to our provider. Same scenario in that 18 medical only. So staff member opens the door, student bumps into the staff member, maybe the staff member cuts themselves on the door, I don't know. There might be something on the door they cut themselves with. We talked to Dr. Bozeman about that, of course, but the staff member might then need stitches. And so they go to the nurse, it's more than a Band-Aid can handle, and they need to go to our occupational health center to get stitches. That would be in that 18 medical only first report of injury.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I guess one, oh.
Go ahead.
No, okay. So I appreciate some of the actions that are being taken, and I'm assuming that we weren't waiting to report to talk about things that we're doing to help with our safety environments. Can you give a sense for how those conversations occur? Are there certain meetings or committees that they take place, and when we may be able to get an update on maybe some of the themes that we're seeing or aggregate actions that might make sense across the districts, just so we have visibility to those?
So I think there were several questions there. I'll take the last part. Our hope is to have this dashboard prepared for you sometime in the next quarter. So I would like to say October, but it just depends on how busy things are between now and then. But to have it quarterly then show up in, at the very least, in the board information packet, and then maybe an annual review at the board level like we're doing tonight in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer all your questions?
Yep, that's good.
So to that, I talked to Dr. Roberts back in early March about the fact that we don't have a school board member on a safety committee, and we don't regularly get reports. And then, obviously this report comes out a couple weeks back, and I think most people were probably shocked that it was like that. I knew the reason why I talked to Dr. Roberts at the time was, and now I don't know what's right and wrong, your 0 incidences with no days at the top of the pyramid. I sat and had a long conversation with the husband of a teacher at one of the schools that was tackled and said that she was on workers' comp for weeks. So I don't know if that's true or if this is true, but I think in order for us to show, to me there's three things that we as a school corporation need to do. We need to safely pick up and return a child, educate them when we have them, and make sure they're well fed, right? Those three things. And with all the stories that I've heard, obviously, I don't know what's real or not now. My request of Dr. Roberts then, and we've had this conversation a little bit in the past, is how do we show the community that safety is number one by putting, I think you'd put either, if you don't want to have public meetings for every safety meeting, you put 2 or 3 board members on the safety committee. How do we get to a point where we have board representation on the safety committee to understand what's happening quickly and where the board needs to provide help?
Yeah, I don't think that's a question for Dr. Staubbaum. I think it's a question for the team. And as you know, we did meet with the safety committee as an entire board to get a little more familiar with the work, and we have agreed to do that as an entire board again yet this year, so that in January, when committee appointments are due, we can make a good decision.
When is the next safety committee meeting?
I don't know that we have it on the calendar yet, but we've got more than 48 hours, obviously, before we would have scheduled that. So it was intended for later this year and before we make committee appointments.
And so the whole board's going to be part of that committee meeting?
Yes, just as it was the first time.
Any additional questions? Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. I do support the second bullet point there. I think accumulating data and looking at it as you're already doing, but then also setting a metric. This is the target we want to hit. I support that. I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about how things progress from the middle of the pyramid to the top of the pyramid. Is that a decision when something's going to be turned into the insurer? Are we we're talking about work comp here? How is that our decision? Is that the injured person's decision? Thank you.
So, okay, let me take that same scenario. So our decision and the injured person's decision is to go to the nurse as their first report of injury. And so it is a collective expectation. As I stated, and I have on the slide, we have a very comprehensive reporting structure for any type of injuries. And so it would be, it's a part of the culture. It's, you got bumped, in the doorway, you're gonna go to the nurse. And so we talked about that information only set with the bump, and maybe I have an ice pack. And then that same scenario, there was a bump, I cut my hand, I need stitches, I went to the medical provider. And so that third triangle might be, there was a bump, I went to the medical provider, and I have a fracture. And so that would be the indemnity claim, because then I would need to be out for a surgery, and so it would place me out of work for a number of days in order for me to have surgery and for my injury to heal. So in that, we don't make the decision on if they receive, what type of medical care they receive. They make the decision that they need to go to occupational health, and then the doctors at occupational health let us know what the course of treatment is. So all of this runs through our workers' compensation provider. Even if it's information only, they still capture all of that information. We still send it to them because these are all first reports of injury. And so one information only, first report of injury, we want to make sure we're gathering, analyzing, assessing those trends, yes. And we also want to follow it and make sure that it doesn't become an issue down the line. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. And then the numbers in the pyramid here, what's the time frame associated with 142?
1 school year.
So this was the 20.
This was the 23-24 school year.
Thank
you. I in my day job, I work with OSHA. Yes. And this is very OSHA-like. First aids, recordables with lost work days is what that pyramid looks like to me. And there's actually ratios that people try to look for. You want the bottom to be healthy because it tells you that you have a good safety culture. And I will say, having worked in a manufacturing site for many years, getting a good safety culture is like 9/10 of the battle. So just having people be willing to come and tell you about these little bumps is a real blessing because it gives you something to fix. So I know we have a lot of work to do. Any more than one name on the list, a count of one is too many, I think, in all of our opinions. But so we have work to do. But it's good to see numbers that we can work with and improve upon. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Now for public comments. As a reminder of our process, so if anyone would ever like to speak at a board meeting, there's a blue sheet at the table when you walk in. You can sign your name, and you will get 3 minutes with the team. There is a clock there for reference. I would ask that if refrain from using names of individuals or specific titles within the school corporation. We just want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable and we're maintaining appropriate confidentiality where needed. No cheers or jeers from the audience. I think it's great to support one another, but if we can just do that quietly, maybe afterwards. Again, want to create an environment that everybody feels comfortable speaking in. So the name I have on the top of the list is Crystal Pumphrey.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Crystal Pumphrey. You spoke at the beginning of the meeting in regards to the threat that was made about 10 days ago. Early Saturday morning on the 14th of September, scrolling through Facebook, I noticed a post in regards to the threat that was made. I was surprised to see the post on Facebook as a notice wasn't sent out to me as a parent, especially with a child who attends a school in this corporation. And I understand that my child may not go or attend the school that was threatened, but as a parent of a child in the school corporation, I feel like over-communication is better than under-communication. I emailed the members of the board and advised them of how I felt, but I felt like speaking today as well. The threat required immediate attention and action to prevent terrible things from occurring, which thankfully it received that action. I think my biggest issue is the lack of notification. My child is 5 years old and autistic. He doesn't have situational awareness. He doesn't pick up on fear. And he has impulse control. So in the event that something tragic like this were to occur at the school that he attends, my child would not react the same way everybody else's would. He wouldn't understand the need to be quiet. He wouldn't understand the need not to move. So I feel as though by not being notified on Friday when the threat occurred, other parents in the district don't have the luxury like I do of being a stay-at-home parent. They don't have the luxury of if they don't feel safe sending their kid to school, they don't have to go to school that day because they're at home. There's a lot of parents in this district that rely on 2 incomes, and don't have the opportunity to find childcare with such short notice. And I understand that an email or a notification was sent out on Sunday afternoon at 2:30 in the afternoon, but that only allowed 18 hours or less for people to find childcare if they felt safe, or if they didn't feel safe sending their child to school. So I guess my only request is that in the event that something like this, God forbid, happens again in the future, over-communicate rather than under-communicate, because I feel like parents should be able to protect their children as that is their right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pumphrey. Ms. Eversole, you were on the list, but you spoke earlier. Did you want to speak again? You're okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. I think that's all we have for tonight.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wielden. Item number 8 on the agenda this evening is a request for approval for old business, the minutes of the regular school board meeting from September 9th, 2024.
I move that we approve the minutes of our regular meeting held September 9th.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes and Mr. Bryant. Any discussion or questions before we go to vote? Okay. I have a motion and a second to approve meeting minutes from board meeting of September 9th. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you. Under new business, we have the regular items of supplemental contracts, field trips and professional leave, school fundraisers, and the claims and payroll. September 23rd claims of $820,000. The August 2024 pre-runs of just over 6.3 million, and then the September 6th payroll run of just over 3.9 million. In addition, under new business, we have the contract with LHP to complete the data, building our data dashboard, Title II and Title IV grants, the 2024 additional appropriation resolution, the final change order for Parkside Elementary project, which is a reduction of that contract, and then approval requested for the Robots for Autism grant that I shared last Friday with you all. There's no equipment involved in this one, it's only professional development.
I move that we approve all items under new business number 9A through J as presented by Dr. Phillips.
I second.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes and Mr. Nallen. Any questions from the team?
Yeah, the only thing I have is, and it won't change the way I vote tonight, but I will ask, I think I've asked for this in the past too. Anytime we have like a guaranteed maximum price or adjustments in an additional appropriation amount, can we get like the original cost versus to the new? So like if it was going to be 10 million and it comes in at 12, or if it was 10 million and it comes in at 8, just so that we have a frame of reference so that we know what it was to what it will be.
Yes, I think that's in your packet. Tell me if you, or we can chat afterwards if you want to see something differently. But the existing contract is listed in there with the deduction in the final contract.
Okay, maybe I overlooked it.
That's okay. I'll chat with you.
I've got just one comment. This is in regards to supplemental contracts. This crosses my mind almost every time I look at it, but, and this is a positive. I always notice that a great many of those are teachers that are substituting for other teachers. And I guess what I would like to say is a big thank you to those teachers that are willing to do that. They're certainly not willing, or they're certainly, I would guess the vast majority of them are not doing it for the money. They are doing it in the best interest of kids and their school and their colleagues. And, you know, in arguably today's day and age, I mean, many of those teachers being willing to give up whatever tiny sliver of their day they have in a chance to catch their breath and collect their thoughts, they are back in the classroom subbing for another teacher. So I would just like to say thank you to all those teachers, every meeting that are always on that list for that reason.
Thank you. Okay. I have a motion and a second to approve all items on new business 9A through J. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Human Resources recommendations. The Human Resources recommendations for this evening consist of 1 appointment, 1 agreement, and 1 leave of absence. I request that you please approve the personnel recommendations as presented in the board packet.
I move that we approve all HR recommendations as provided by Dr. Stahlbaum.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grimes and Mr. Major. All those in favor of approving items 10, Human Resources recommendations as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you. There are no additional personnel recommendations for this evening.
Okay, board input and review. Ms. Janelle, would you like to start?
Okay. I would like to thank all the members of the public, and some of them have already left, that spoke tonight. I know it was particularly hard for Ms. Pumphrey to be up there, and it's particularly hard to be living in a day and age where we have to worry about things like we had to worry about last week. I happened to be at North High School, not because of that, but for something else that day, and to see how much that impacted the learning and the environment of the school was just, it wasn't just a little thing. In fact, when I was leaving, Mr. Clark, the principal, was out in the parking lot telling parents as they drove up in cars that they had heard a false rumor on social media that day, and that the school really was not under a lockdown and school was going on as normal, and the parents said, okay, thanks, and drive on. But it impacted everybody at the school. The other thing I wanted to say, I actually have a couple other comments, and I'm going to put them in application to a session I went to at the ISBA Fall Conference. The session was called Student Outcomes Don't Change Until Adult Behaviors Change. And the challenge was what we value, what we're all about, is improving student outcomes. And so the challenge was, so what % of your board time do you spend talking about student outcomes? So they talked about inputs and outcomes. So tonight we talked about the budget. That's always fun, and that's definitely an input because we need to do it. That's us putting input into investing in our students and our teachers. The transportation report was an input, and I was totally impressed that we are ahead of the curve in safety and the way that we communicate with parents through that whole process. I wish we had that when my kids were going through school. Oh, the bus is only 5 minutes away. and that's a great thing. I'm thrilled that we're doing that, and that's another input that we're putting into the system. The report about transition to teaching was fabulous. That's an outcome, but that's an adult outcome. And it's an adult outcome that's going to help our kids. So the question we were asked was, what % of your last board meeting did you spend on student outcomes? I think it was 0 this time. So I won't tell you how high they expect it to be, but my challenge, and I hope this isn't one of those things that I'm excited because it was today and then I forget about it. But my challenge is going to be, how can we increase the time we spend talking about student outcomes? I don't want a longer meeting, but I think we don't do that enough.
Many thanks again to all those involved in the transportation and transition to teaching updates, information, very informative, lots of good information, much appreciated. Thanks to all the community members who took time out of their evening to be here this evening, and the 4 that spoke either during the public hearing or the regular board meeting. And then lastly, I would just like to encourage any parents or guardians who might be out there listening now or might watch this later to consider filling out the BCSC Family Engagement Survey that was in the last newsletter sent out by Mr. Burnett, dated September 20th, I believe. And so there is a real opportunity there to share your valuable opinion in all things regarding BCSC.
I'd also like to echo, I appreciated all the participants today, especially on the cabinet reports. I really enjoy us bringing people closer, close to the work. So I appreciated Ms. Copper, Ms. Gino, Ms. Garcia. That was really nice to be able to hear directly from them and ask them questions. So more of that going forward if we have an opportunity, if it's relevant. That was really nice. I agree with Dale on outcomes and results. I think that's also a really critical point. I think for the meeting tonight, there was just so much swirling in the community and on people's minds about safety. So although I agree, I felt like the time tonight was well spent on helping people who are worried, are afraid, understand all of this information around us, because it just gives clarity on like, what do we do? Now, what do we do next? We really need to understand these problems and understand the real events so that we can do something about it. And I felt like I got information tonight that is a step in that direction. So anyway, I appreciated the information and just can't say enough about law enforcement. Thank you here in the room and everyone who has just supported the community, our teachers in our buildings the last few weeks especially.
Excellent input and review so far. I don't think I can add anything. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to go back, you're right, it was in there. I did look. It's the HVAC. I'll talk to you after. The first thing I wanted to say is that, like Dale mentioned, the Indiana School Board Association convention is today, tomorrow. And I sat through effective school communication in peacetime and crisis. It's a great conversation around, basically, I wish Crystal was still here. I mean, I could just say ditto, right? I mean, it was everything she said. You want to be quick, you want to be truthful, right? I mean, they give you a whole list of things that they tell you to do. And I think it was timely for me to attend that. The afternoon session that I attended was on enhancing, nope, hold on. Where's it at? Great on there. It's about a book that A.J. Crable wrote that is great on their behalf, why school boards fail and how yours can become effective. And to Dale's point, it was a lot of stuff that I don't think we probably talk about enough. A year and a half ago, we talked about doing more metrics and analysis and understanding reports to understand how everybody was performing. We did not incorporate that into the agenda, so it might be something that we can bring back and have a discussion about now a little bit later, especially if we have a team working on metrics so that we understand how we're going to report those. So all good stuff. You know, last week we had a lot of concerns from parents, students, community members, BCSC employees. Thankfully, the police department was able to help bring closure to the situation, and everybody was able to take a breath and settle down. There's a lot that we can learn on both sides from a community standpoint and from our standpoint as well about, you know, hopefully we don't ever have to do this again, but if we do this again, we hopefully have learned from it the first time so that we do a better job in the future.
I just wanted to echo Dr. Phillips' statement. Law enforcement got it right. It's not a situation of us going out there, excuse me, not us, them, going out there and finding this situation, but getting the situation right. So I thank law enforcement back there for being here tonight, and take that to your city and tell them that we all thank you very much for the job that you do.
And Mrs. Wielden, I just want to add, I always love seeing our school board members. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about the folks who work in school directly with kids all day, but we continuously see our school board members show up in the paper as an example for our kids and for our community of strength and leadership and being good examples for others. And that was certainly the case on Saturday's article with Mr. Grimes. So thanks for doing that.
Okay. Our next board meeting is on October 28th, right here in this building at 6:30 p.m. Meeting is adjourned.